Hello, I'm Langston, and I'm back on my channel, Military Election Forecasting. Today, I'm going to be talking about a very important topic, and that is the fact that Donald Trump is a very overrated candidate and very overestimated by his supporters and by the Republican Party. And I'm going to be going in depth to break down why I have this narrative. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a very unbiased person when it comes to making political predictions. I do have personal beliefs that I'm not going to sit up here and deny, but I made two videos on this channel about why I feel like Donald Trump is a very underestimated candidate. And had a lot of factual data to back up my argument. A year ago, people acted like Donald Trump had no chance of winning the presidency. And I always thought Donald Trump was the underdog, but I never denied Donald Trump's electability and how he could put together a coalition to win, despite the fact that I thought it was unlikely. But since then, people act like Donald Trump is just unbeatable, like he can't be beaten, and just like America's demographics is just some kumbaya for Republicans to be winning in. And that's just not what the math, the factual data, and the demographic trends are showing. Also, I made a video about how I feel like Kamala Harris was underestimated as a candidate. And when I made that video, people laughed at me. Like people thought I was a joke. And here it is. And you can see I was right. Like I said that Republicans would be foolish to underestimate Kamala Harris, and they did underestimate Kamala Harris. And as you've seen as today, it might be their detriment. The biggest argument you hear Republicans pitch is the fact that Trump won in 2016, and if he's able to go back to 2016, he can win, despite the fact that 2016 was 8 years ago. 8 years of demographic changes, 8 years of America becoming a lot less white, a lot more minority majority in a lot of states. 8 years of suburban trends, like 8 years of a lot more educated people being added to the electorate, 8 years of a lot of older white voters dying. Like 8 years is a lot of time. A lot of things have changed in those 8 years. And to sit up here and act like nothing's changed is delusional. And for Republicans, they underestimated John Fetterman. They underestimated Katie Hobbs in 2022. We saw that backfired. And it's a very similar aspect as what you saw Democrats do to Donald Trump in 2016. Democrats acted like Trump had no chance of winning. Like everyone bought into the fact that Trump was just unelectable. He had no chance of winning until he did win. And you saw the same thing. Like Republicans told themselves that Kamala Harris was not a good candidate. Like she could not win. That Republicans prayed for this moment. Like they wanted for Joe Biden to drop out and for Kamala Harris to be the nominee. They thought she'd be much easier to beat than Joe Biden. And now they're seeing their whole words just be false. Like everything they ran on is fake. Like it's no evidence that Kamala Harris is ever significantly weaker than Joe Biden. And what we're seeing is she's actually a lot stronger. In 2016, Trump was able to narrowly win because he did excellent with white working class voters and white rural voters. Democrats weren't necessarily winning white rural voters, but Donald Trump made them a lot more Republican leaning. And he brought a lot of these voters into the Republican column in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and solidified Iowa and Ohio in Republicans' favor. But what people forget is that Trump was able to hold on to enough of those college educated moderates from Mitt Romney's coalition to add to his coalition that he built to hold on to a narrow victory. But that coalition was not sustainable. Like that coalition only existed for one time because in the next election, Trump would lose too many of those college educated voters to be able to put together a winning coalition. And even in 2016, he relied on black turnout being low in the big cities in the Rust Belt. And for a lot of, Bernie supporters and a lot of left wing Democrats voting for Jill Stein or choosing not to show up for Hillary Clinton on election day. And even with that, all of those, favorable things that he was able to put together, he only won Michigan by 10,000 votes. He won Pennsylvania by 44,000 and Wisconsin by 22,000. So even with that, like that electorate was very narrow. Fast forward 8 years later, and Trump is at a disadvantage electorally, and we're going to talk about that. So for Trump, I do think his path is very unlikely. We're going to talk about states that I think he could, win and what his chances look like. So for Trump, the best state of these seven of the swing states, in my opinion, is Wisconsin. If the election was held today, I think Kamala Harris would win, but the election isn't today, like the election is in November. Trump has a lot of good things going for him in Wisconsin. And, the polls have substantially underestimated Donald Trump in Wisconsin. I do want to say in 2022, the polls did underestimate underestimated Mandela Barnes. and Tony Evers. They had Tony Evers losing, and they had Mandela Barnes, losing substantially. He barely even lost in 2022. And Tony Evers won quite convincingly. But, you look at Wisconsin, Donald Trump was able to make some sizable gains in the rural working class parts of Wisconsin for the most part, like especially in the driftless area. And, Kamala Harris, she can improve. She can, get out these black voters in Milwaukee. She can get out these young voters in Madison, keep up the suburban trends in the wild counties. The suburban trends in the wild counties are very overrated. There's not that many people that live in Wisconsin suburbs to counteract the rural areas like there are in other states. So Trump was able to continue making gains in working class rural parts of the state. It's a very good chance that Kamala Harris can't gain enough voters in Milwaukee and Madison and the suburbs to counteract that. So that's, the case for Donald Trump in the state. But I do want to say if Kamala Harris is able to get really good numbers of black turnout, sizable, really good numbers of young voters in Madison, keep up the suburban trends, and it has an appropriate floor in the working class areas, she can win, but that's not the most likely scenario. So I do think Trump has a sizable path in his state. But after that, like the next states aren't that likely for him. Next state is North Carolina. Trump has to hold on here to have any sizable chance of winning the presidency. And moving on to North Carolina, he won his state by, a little bit more than a point in 2020. But Democrats did not really do well with black turnout in the state. Like they really been struggling with black turnout in North Carolina in every election. We saw this huge in 2022. And I do want to say Sherry Beasley was able to do pretty decent. I think if they would have ran, another candidate, they probably would have lost by substantially more. The Democrats are not getting the turnout they need from black voters to win statewide. They are making improvements with college educated voters in the suburbs, and it's not enough to make up for their deficit with black voters in the inner cities. And for Kamala, like if she's able to get good numbers in Charlotte and Raleigh, keep up the suburban trends, she might take Trump down in the state. Like I think her chances in North Carolina are better than Wisconsin. But as of today, like the Democratic Party in North Carolina is a joke. Like they really consistently struggle to turn out enough black voters to win statewide. And I think Trump is going to continue making improvements to white rural voters, working class voters across the state. And I think that will be enough to, I think his victory would narrow, but I think that as of today, I think Kamala might be favored in North Carolina. It's like a 50-50, but I think that by November, I think Trump's chances will go up. And I think that he wins North Carolina very, very narrowly, but I think that he holds on. But, after this, like the math gets very hard for Trump to win, like the election. And we're going to move across the board. So Michigan is one of the states in the Rust Belt where Trump's chances are not that likely. Republicans have always overestimated their chances in Michigan. Even against Joe Biden, I think Biden was still a narrow favorite in Michigan because of the suburbs. Western Michigan is trending rapidly against Republicans. As you're seeing, look at these margins in Western Michigan. It's a very left trending area. And as well as Oakland County as well. Oakland County is a left trending area. Hillary Clinton was able to improve in these areas as well. And even with horrible black turnout in Detroit, Democrats will still probably pull off a narrow victory in the state. Commerce is going to do pretty well with black voters in the big cities. Like in Detroit, she's going to do really well. I think that she does solid in Flint. I think that she's going to do pretty well in Ann Arbor. If she's going to have any struggles, it's going to be with Ann Arbor. There's a lot of young voters, a lot of pro-Palestine voters. But I think that she'll do really well here. And if she's doing well with, black voters in Detroit, young voters in Ann Arbor, keeping up the suburban trends in Oakland and Western Michigan, she's going to win here by like 2 or 3, maybe a little bit more. And there's little that Trump can do to make up for it. I think he'll improve in the working class rural parts of the state, but it's not enough to make up for where the population lives in Michigan. And the math just isn't math to a victory for him in the state. Nevada, very similar thing. Republicans always overestimate their chance in Nevada. Like they're so confident the Republicans are going to win Nevada, despite the fact that polls always underestimate Democrats in Nevada. In 2022, Steve Sisolak was supposed to lose Nevada by a lot more than he ended up losing by. Catherine Cortez Masto was supposed to lose Nevada. She did not lose Nevada. She held on. In 2020, Biden was expected to win Nevada by a little bit less. He ended up winning it by, according to Real Clear Politics. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was supposed to lose Nevada. She ended up winning Nevada. 2018, Democrats in the Senate and Steve Sisolak was expected to lose Nevada in 2018. They both ended up winning quite convincingly at that. So polls always usually underestimate Democrats in Nevada. As of now, Kamala Harris is actually leading in the polls in Nevada, which is a huge problem for Donald Trump. And you keep hearing Republicans that are going to make these gains in Clark County. even though the fact that in 2020, Nevada was having really big economic issues due to COVID and, Hispanic trends to incumbents, which you always see for incumbent presidents. And even with that, Biden won Nevada by the same as Hillary Clinton. So with that, like, I think Kamala is a lot better of a candidate for, working class voters in Las Vegas than someone like Joe Biden. I think she has a lot more appeal to younger voters. Nevada's a very diverse state, one of the most diverse states in the country, a minority majority state. I think she has a lot of appeal here that, Joe Biden did not have. And even if she does a little bit worse than Clark, like Democrats have to do substantially worse than Clark to actually lose. Like I've heard people say she's gonna win Clark by 7, but she's gonna lose the state, despite the fact that in 2020 Democrats are winning Clark by 7 when they end up losing when they were ahead in the state. Like Nevada remained uncalled for days because they were waiting for more votes to come out of Nevada before they called the state. But in that time, Biden had a narrow lead in Nevada, primarily because he had a 7 point lead in Clark. So if she's maintaining that she's going to win statewide. I expect her to win Clark by about 8 to 11, and I expect her to improve in Washoe, which is a has been left trending has been a very left trending county. I do think Trump would do very well in the rural areas, but with that, I expect him to lose Nevada by like 2 or 3, and there's really no argument to, justify why he's going to win the state. The next state is Arizona. Republicans have been so confident in their victory in Arizona, despite the fact that they've all lost. Like every race, Republicans have lost since 2016 federally. And the GOP was confident that Kerry Lake was going to win. I even thought Blake Masters had a sizable chance. Kerry Lake lost to an underfunded campaign that basically gave up. Like Katie Hobbs failed to debate. She failed to do, she didn't really even try. And she was still able to beat Kerry Lake in a down ballot race. Like you have to realize Arizona's a lot more Republican down ballot. And, the electorate that showed up was a Trump electorate. And, Republicans still lost with that. And you also need to factor in the fact that Democrats lost a lot of ground with they lost a lot of ground with Hispanic voters. Like Katie Hobbs only won Hispanics by 15%. They only lost white voters by 1, so that was why they were able to win. But you look at this, like Santa Cruz, Biden got 6-7% of the vote in Santa Cruz County. Like you go to Mark Kelly, yeah, he got about the same, 68% of the vote. So that's about the same. But you go to Katie Hobbs, like Katie Hobbs got 67% of the vote here, 33. Like Democrats did substantially worse in Santa Cruz County. Like they did a little bit worse in, a lot of these Hispanic areas in 2020 than Joe Biden did. 2022, I'm sorry. And something else that's really hurting Trump in his state is a lot of moderate Republicans are endorsing Kamala, which is to be expected, including the mayor of Mesa. Mesa is one of the last Republican strongholds in Maricopa County. It's one of the places that Trump did win in Maricopa. He did win it by substantially less than he won it in 2016, but he still won it despite losing the county. It, has 500,000 people, and this mayor has been endorsing Democrats for a long time, and it kind of shows you like the leftward trend amongst moderates and left leaning Republicans in Maricopa County. Biden won this by 2. Kamala will likely do a little bit better here, and if she's doing a little bit better in Maricopa, there's nothing Trump can do to make up the deficit statewide. 60% of Arizona's population lives in Maricopa. The Democrats winning Maricopa, they're probably winning statewide. And there's, really no argument to back that up despite that. And for, Trump, he's a really bad candidate for suburban voters in Arizona. You keep hearing people say, oh, the border's going to make an impact. The border's the issue. The border. The border was a way bigger issue in 2022. Like Carrie Lake ran her whole campaign on the governor on the border. Blake Masters ran his whole campaign on the border. They still lost. Same thing for Martha McSally. In 2016, Trump's whole campaign was on immigration. He still did, what, 7 points worse in Maricopa County than Mitt Romney. So the border didn't save him from underperforming in Arizona in 2016, and it saved him in 2020, and it saved him in 2000, and it saved Republicans in 2022. It's not going to save Trump in 2020. There's really no argument to make for Trump in Arizona. And hearing these illusional arguments that you hear from Republicans about how they're going to improve with all these demographic groups, despite the huge thing of college-educated white voters trending away from Republicans in the Phoenix suburbs and in the Tucson area. And with that, like, there's no argument for Trump to win statewide. And that's why Trump has to win Georgia and Pennsylvania to win the presidency. And as of now, like Trump's chances in both aren't that likely. Like he's likely to lose both as of today. And starting off in Georgia, which gives Kamala Harris the presidency, the Atlanta area is a problem for Donald Trump. Like you see this whole area trending to Democrats. And the Atlanta area even trended more so in 2022 in the runoff election. Like, look at these margins, quite substantial. And for Republicans to win Georgia, they need for black turnout to go down. And with Kamala Harris on a ticket, that's just unlikely. With Joe Biden, that was a very likely scenario. But against Kamala, like Kamala's strongest demographic group is black voters. And that's the prime Democratic electorate in Georgia. For Republicans, they face a problem in Georgia because Georgia lacks swing voters the same way other states have. Like other states have substantial amounts of swing voters. Georgia doesn't really have any swing voters. Like it has black voters that vote Democrat, white voters that vote Republican, and there's really no in between. Like those are the two demographic groups in Georgia. Republicans are winning over 70% of the white vote in Georgia. They're still losing. They're even making gains with Hispanic and Asian American voters in the state, and they're still losing the state. So Republicans need to improve with black voters or for black turnout to collapse. And those are very unlikely scenarios with Kamala Harris on the ballot. Kamala Harris will likely do a little bit better in the Atlanta area than Joe Biden was able to do. 2022, you see this like Joe Biden's numbers in the Atlanta area is kind of the floor for Democrats. Like these aren't even that impressive of margins, despite how good they looked. You know, you look at Clinton County, 84.9% of the vote. You go to 2020, 2022, 89% of the vote. You go to Gwinnett, 62% of the vote. Joe Biden only got 58. You go to Cobb, Joe Biden got 56. Raphael Warnock got 60. Like, look at these numbers. Henry, Biden got 66% of the vote. I'm sorry, Warnock got 66% of the vote. Biden only got 58, 59. I'm sorry. So look at these like numbers. Look at how much, Warnock outperformed Joe Biden by, and this is a lower turnout election. So you look at this, look at these numbers 10% in Rockdale, 12% in Henry. Henry's the fastest left turning county in Georgia. Douglas, 8 points. 5.5 in Paulding, 4.5 in Cobb, 6 points in Gwinnett. Like, look at these numbers. Like, this is crazy. 6 points in Fayette. Trump won Fayette by he won Fayette by about a little bit less than 7. I think that he could realistically go down in Fayette in 2024. Like, Fayette's very left trending. You see, this is the last Republican stronghold in the Atlanta area. 12 points in Democrats. It could easily trend half of that in 2024. And I think Commons going to do really well in Savannah, in Augusta, as well as in Columbus and Macon, a lot of the other cities in Georgia, and then the University of Georgia, UGA, and Athens. I think that, Democrats are losing ground in the black belt, but it's not that many votes here. You know, a lot of these black people in the rural Georgia are moving to Atlanta for better opportunities. Trump is going to do excellent in the white rural parts of Georgia, but it's just not enough to counteract the Atlanta metro area. And that's really the case for him. Like for Trump to win Georgia, he needs black turnout to go down, and that's just not going to be a likely scenario for him in 2024. In Pennsylvania, Trump's chances are better, but he's still an underdog here. And I see two scenarios. I see a scenario where where Kamala absolutely collapses in the right working class parts of the state, but she keeps up the suburban trends in the Philly suburbs and in the Pittsburgh suburbs, and she's able to win by like half a point. And I see a scenario where Kamala Harris has an appropriate floor in the working class parts of the state, and she gets really good black turnout in Philadelphia, and she keeps up the suburban trends in the Philly suburbs. And that's the problem. Like Trump almost completely maxed out these working class rural parts of Pennsylvania. And I do think Kamala can crash and burn you know, in Scranton. Like she doesn't have the hometown appeal that Joe Biden had. Like I think she can lose Erie, but there's just not that many votes here. Like even if she's doing worse in Erie as well as in Lackawanna, like look at these Biden won this by 9,000 votes. Like he won Erie by a little bit less than 2,000 votes. Like that's just not enough when Biden won by 81,000 votes statewide. I think Trump can squeeze another 30, 40,000 votes at these working class rural areas, but that only cuts Biden's margin in half. So that's when, he needs turnout in Philadelphia to fall to make up for the rest of it. And that's just not a likely scenario. Like I think Congress is going to do pretty well with black turnout in Philadelphia. And what these suburbs in Philadelphia are consistently trending to the left. Even Hillary Clinton was able to outperform Barack Obama in these areas. Like you go to 2016, Hillary Clinton did better in the Philly suburbs like Delaware, Chester. She improved. Even Allegheny, like she improved in these areas. And if she's doing that, like there's nothing Trump can do to make up for that statewide. Like you give Hillary Clinton's Biden suburban numbers, she wins the state narrowly. So with that, like there's really no argument for Trump to make in Pennsylvania. I do see a path. He needs Black China in Philadelphia to fall. He needs to continue, doing what he does in the working class rural parts. And he wants to stop the suburbs from trending rapidly to the left. Like he could afford like a 2, maybe 3% shift, but he cannot afford 4 or 5% trend to the left. That would, really sink his chances. But that's he's still an underdog. Like he's still unlikely to win. Like he has a path, but his path isn't the most likely. And that's why Trump is overrated. Like that's why he's, his chances are not the best. And you hear conservatives brag about the polls. When Trump was beating Biden in the polls by like 5 points nationwide, despite the fact that it was like 0% chance that Biden lost the popular vote by 5, Republicans ran with that. But now that the polls are showing Democrats winning, now all of a sudden the polls are fake. Republicans are betting on the fact that the polls are going to underestimate Trump. But even if the polls underestimated Trump, like Kamala would still win Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia and Nevada. So even if the polls underestimated Trump the same way they underestimated him in 2020, Kamala would still win. You can't make your argument, then reverse it when it doesn't echo your beliefs, point blank, period. So with that, this shows why Trump is overestimated, why Republicans are at a disadvantage, and there's really no argument against that. Anyway, please like, comment, subscribe down below. Make sure you have a nice day, you guys. Goodbye.